Hello, warfighters. War is hell. Welcome to the intermission of what would have happened had there been a second Korean War. In this intermission, we're going to recap some of the things that have happened on the ground so far, as well as talk about some of the other things that have been happening off of the battlefield that will play a role in the outcome of this series. At the end, we're also going to set up the second part of what you're going to see on this channel here. So as we review what's happened up until now, when the North Koreans began to shell Yongpyong Island, South Korea responded with an artillery bombardment of their North Korean position. This artillery strike caused an immense amount of casualties for North Korea. Taking matters into their own hands, a Korean colonel ordered an invasion of Yongpyong Island. South Korean Marines already stationed on Yongpyong Island put up a valiant fight, but reinforcements were needed to push the North Korean presence off of the island. With such an escalation in the fighting, Kim Jong-il ordered the first steps of an invasion of South Korea by activating North Korean sleeper cells and special forces operating in South Korea. Their aim was to take out influential South Korean and American command staff in order to cause as much chaos in South Korea as possible. With South Korea reeling from the North Korean attacks across the country, North Korea crossed the DMZ in force, overwhelming the South Korean defenders along the DMZ. The United States obviously became involved in the war and immediately began targeting North Korean artillery positions with their aircraft. The United States is working as hard as they can to bring as many of their own troops to South Korea to aid in the defense of the Korean Peninsula. North Korea isn't able to advance through South Korea as quickly as they had anticipated. Despite having overwhelming numbers, South Korea continues to mobilize their troops, and North Korea is met with firm resistance, becoming even more firm every day. Even behind the lines of North Korea, South Korean forces are doing everything they can to keep as many North Korean troops away from the front as possible. Despite their slow advance, North Korean forces are able to make it to the gates of Seoul, which was only 35 miles away from the DMZ when the war started. Kim Jong-il wants Seoul. He pours a large amount of troops into Seoul, but again is met with very heavy resistance as South Korean forces stand firm against North Korea. As the war rages on in the capital and elsewhere in South Korea, a plan is set in motion to poison Kim Jong-il. A source inside Pyongyang has informed South Korea that Kim Jong-un will be visiting an airbase in North Korea to congratulate some North Korean pilots on a successful attack on a South Korean supply depot. A plan is quickly put in place to assassinate Kim Jong-un and poison Kim Jong-il almost simultaneously, thus creating a power vacuum in North Korea. Both plans are completed successfully, and the North Korean army is essentially leaderless. This will set the stage for the second part of this series, but first, let's give you the casualties. For North Korea, 18,122 dead, 25,854 wounded, 6,322 captured. For South Korea, 6,933 dead, 10,891 wounded, and 821 captured. For the United States, 1,262 dead, 2,832 wounded, and 32 captured. For the civilians, 97,382 have been killed or wounded, a lot of them in Seoul. With the casualties continuing to mount and little progress being made by the North Korean forces, things were getting pretty bad. With the death of the Kims, the situation became dire. Two factions began to rise in North Korea with this power vacuum. The first faction was loyal to Jang Song-thaek, Kim Jong-un's uncle. This faction adhered to the old ways of North Korea and contained most of the old guard. The other faction that was competing for power was led by Kim Yong-jin, an education officer that promised major reform to North Korea's government. China saw an opportunity to influence the future of North Korea in a way that was favorable to the Chinese. At the beginning of the war, they publicly denounced both sides of the conflict and vowed not to get caught up in the war. However, China had been secretly supplying North Korea with weapons, ammunition, and other critical supplies through clandestine means. With so few supplies remaining, North Korea's future would be determined by China. The two North Korean factions became more and more hostile to each other. North Korea and China knew a division of such magnitude would surely make North Korean victory impossible. President Hu Jintao had to choose who he and the Chinese supplies would support. Would he choose the old guard or those clamoring for reform? You'll have to find out what happens in the second half of what will become known as the Second Korean War.